Welcome everyone to the PT Plus online classroom. Today we're going to be looking at PTE listening right from dictation. A lot of you will know this as WFD, right from dictation. That's a commonly used acronym for this section of the exam. Now, for many of you who've taken the exam before, you'll know that this is probably the most important section in the listening exam. So it's imperative that we do well and we understand what this question type is all about. So in today's first lesson, I hope to go through right from dictation with you. We want to go through the different scoring requirements. We want to talk about why this is important, as well as do a few sample questions so you can get a better understanding of right from dictation. Okay, so without further ado, let's go to the official PTE website and let's watch this clip to explain to us what right from dictation is.
Right from dictation. For this item type, you hear a short sentence.
The cart carries a single object.
Listen carefully and type the sentence into the response box at the bottom of the screen. Remember to check your spelling.
Okay, so you can say that this is going to be the actual screen when you go into the examination as well. We can see quite a few things, right? Let's talk about the time remaining, obviously on the top right, time remaining and how many questions you've got left. And remember, there's going to be between 3 to 4 of right from dictation questions in your exam. Obviously, it's randomly generated by the PT system, so every time you take the test, it could be different. So don't worry, there's going to be at least 3 as a minimum and 4 as a maximum. You can see here that the clips are actually quite short. They're not very long, right? The green bar tells us how much of the clip there is left and how quickly it plays. It doesn't matter. For this particular part of the exam, don't even look at the green bar because, well, it's always going to be very short. At the top, we've got the status, and in the middle, we've got the volume bar. So like I said earlier with the other sessions, we will want to have adjusted our volume well before this section. So we want to adjust our volume typically during the mic test part of the examination. So if you're adjusting the volume in the middle of the test, it's going to ruin and it's going to distract you. So we don't want that. The reason why we're recommending you to take between 50 seconds to a minute for this task is so you have ample time to write down the whole sentence. Now this is because overall this is the most important part of your listening exam. It's just worth so many more marks than other sections. So that's why we need to be taking really good care here. The prompt length is usually going to be around 5 seconds, and that's fine. So you can see here at the bottom, we've got a few different toolbars, right? We've got the cut, copy, paste option. These are just to cut, copy, and paste your own words in there. So don't worry too much about these. And you can see here, we're writing our words in this text box that's provided. We've also got a word count on the bottom left. So once we're sure that this is going to be our final submission, we press the next button to lock in our answer. So now let's have a look at the scoring system and just really understand why this is one of the most important sections of the whole exam, and not just the listening exam, because we can see here that the marks contribute towards listening and writing. So the key here is it contributes towards both listening and writing. As it goes towards 2 parts of the exam, this doubles in value. So at initial glance, you might think to yourself, hey, we just get 1 mark, right? 1 mark for each word spelled correctly and 0 for each incorrect or misspelled word. It's 1 mark. What's the big deal here? The key here is 1 mark for each word spelled correctly. Each word. Notice how it's each. That means every word in the sentence. Let's have a look at the previous example that we had earlier. So now let's listen to it together and try to remember the sentence like we actually have to do in the examination.
The cart carries a single object.
So here we've got the sentence, the cart carries a single object. The cart carries a single object. Immediately, we've got 5 marks, right? 5 marks in just the span of a second. So that's why it's so important for us to do this question well. And you might be thinking to yourself, what does the sentence mean? What is a cart? Why does it carry a single object? Don't think too much about it. Essentially with this task, your understanding of the sentence will matter very little, and it will just require your memory. The sentences aren't going to be long, so it's only a little bit of your memory, and most of it's just technique and skills in which we're going to be teaching you in this section of the PT Plus online course. So remember, each word is given 1 mark if it's spelled correctly, and each incorrect word is given 0. So it's important to remember here that there's no deduction rule. So even if we're not 100% sure about a word, go for it. Try your best. There is also no grammar score, so don't worry about that either. Just try to get each individual word correct. Don't worry about if it makes sense grammatically. Don't worry about the sentence or what the words mean. Even if you don't know the word, give it your best. The only mark is spelling, and there's no other spelling score. So here we've got the key. It takes up nearly 30% of the listening scores. So out of the whole exam, out of all the different sections, this alone stands for around a third, making this a very important part of the exam and one we need to focus on. So now I've been talking about the exam for a lot. Let's have a feel for what it's like. Here is the sample question. So this is obviously taken from our PTE Plus online courses, and this sample is a question that you'll likely actually get in the real exam. So I want you to go get a piece of paper and a pen and write down your answer. You can pause the video if you're having trouble looking for one. Okay. Or alternatively, you can obviously open a Microsoft Word document and have it on the right. Are you ready? Let's listen to it together. So let's listen to it together now.
In this language course, we focus both on fluency and accuracy.
So now that we've heard the clip, what I want you to do is try to remember and recall exactly what you heard and try to write down as much as you can. It doesn't matter if it's a long word or short word. Remember, marks are given equally for each individual word that's spelled correctly. So it's important that we attempt to do everything, especially since you don't get marks deducted if you make mistakes. Okay, so now let's have a look at the transcript and see what the original answer was. In this language course, we focus both on fluency and accuracy. In counting up the words, we'll notice that it's worth a total of 11 marks in just a few seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Wow, and one important thing for us to note is that every word is equal marks. So in, that's 1 mark. But difficult words like fluency and accuracy are also 1 mark. So that's why we need to introduce a lot of techniques to help us catch these easier words and focus on those. So even if you're stuck on a word, like for example, fluency, you need to keep listening on, you need to keep writing. And then and would be an easy mark, right? So whatever you do, never get stuck on a word, keep going. You need to have the right mentality of pushing through. Okay, so that's the first sample that we've listened to. Let's listen to another sample here. Okay, so once again, I want you to prepare your pen and paper. Okay, are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go.
Scientists learn through the observations and analysis of human behavior.
Okay, so that was a bit of a more complex question and one that you should have had some difficulty on. If not, then great, you're ready for the test. But if you did, that's okay, because we're going to be teaching you how to deal with these sentences. So now take some time to organize your notes, to try to complete your sentence, fill in any of the spelling that you might have missed, as well as double check what you spelled. Once you're done with that, let's go through the answers together. You can unpause the video. So the answer is, scientists learn through the observations and the analysis of the human behavior. Notice how we've got several complicated words that we might not be familiar with, and that's okay. One thing we have to note is that for words like scientists, if there's an S at the end, we need to make sure to take special note of it and write it in, because this is a common area that a lot of students lose marks on. They spell the word scientists completely correctly, they listen to it, they understand it, but when they're writing it, they just forget the S. Now, plurals are a very difficult concept in English, and it's not present in every language, so it depends on which language you're from. Students are often sometimes very vulnerable to making this mistake. So for those of you who aren't very familiar with it, especially because S sounds can sometimes appear as Z sounds, in the next lesson we're going to be talking about that and giving you some tips and strategies in dealing with this. You'll also notice that in total there are 12 words. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to 12, meaning this is 12 marks. Very high, right? Now let's look at the next example together, sample 3. So prepare to listen. Okay, let's start.
Animals raised in captivity behave differently from their wild counterparts.
So now, like always, take time in organizing your notes as well as filling out the sentence. When you feel like you're ready, unpause the video and we can go through the answer together. So welcome back. The answer is this. Animals raised in captivity behave differently from their wild counterparts. Now this is a very typical question that you're going to get in this section of the exam, and this is a frequently reoccurring sentence. But it should pose as a difficult sentence to those who haven't practiced this section. Why do I say that? It's because the sentence contains some difficult words, but more importantly, it's just a very hard sentence to understand for non-native speakers. Animals raised in captivity behave differently from their wild counterparts. A lot of students who are beginning to take the exam will obviously make the mistake of trying to understand the sentence. Remember what we said about understanding the sentence? You don't need to necessarily understand the sentence to be able to reproduce it and write it down. So that's where we need to be careful of. And this sentence has a total of 10 words, making it a total of 10 marks. So don't worry if you're feeling quite overwhelmed, because that's okay. This is only our first lesson. And in our next lesson, we're going to be talking about how can we take notes? How can we overcome difficulties with taking notes? And how can we overcome being worried about not understanding and losing too many marks? So thank you for joining me today on the PT Plus online platform. I hope to see you all very soon.